The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that made every creak of the old wooden house feel louder than it should have. Emily Carter lay in her bed, wrapped up in the soft quilt her grandmother had given her years ago. Her father, Daniel, was working late again, leaving her alone in the house they had only recently moved into. It wasn't unusual for him to work late shifts. Ever since her mother passed away, he had been picking up extra hours, doing whatever it took to keep their lives afloat. Emily respected him for that, but she couldn't help feeling lonely on nights like this. Daniel had a friend, a man named Richard Lawson, who had been around more often lately. He was one of those people who could charm a room the moment he walked in, always smiling, always telling stories that seemed too wild to be true. He was a tall man with graying hair at his temples, the kind of man who carried himself with confidence and authority. Daniel trusted him, and because her father trusted him, Emily had grown accustomed to his presence. Still, there was something about Richard that made her uneasy, though she could never quite put her finger on what it was. That evening, after dinner, Richard had stopped by unexpectedly. Emily remembered the way her dad had been surprised but not displeased. "Didn't expect you tonight," Daniel had said, patting his friend on the back as he led him inside. Richard had grinned, holding up a six-pack of beer. "Thought you could use some company," he said. They had settled in the living room while Emily excused herself, retreating upstairs with a book. She could hear their laughter echoing through the floorboards as they talked about old times, jobs they had worked together, and people they used to know. Emily had drifted in and out of sleep, comforted by the low murmur of their voices below. But at some point, the laughter faded. The house grew quiet again. Too quiet. Sometime in the middle of the night, Emily woke up suddenly. She wasn't sure what stirred her. The faint sound of footsteps on the stairs, the shifting shadows across her wall, or the uneasy feeling in the pit of her stomach. She lay still, listening. Her father never came upstairs this late, and she was certain he had been tired enough to fall asleep on the couch downstairs. Her heart began to thump harder as the footsteps drew closer. The door creaked open slowly, and a sliver of light from the hallway spilled across her room. Emily sat up, clutching her blanket to her chest, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Dad." But when the figure stepped into the doorway, she realized it wasn't her father. It was Richard. Her pulse quickened as she blinked, confused. He stood there for a moment, his tall frame casting a long shadow across her floor. "Hey, Emily," he said softly, almost too softly, as though he didn't want anyone else to hear. "Sorry if I scared you. Your dad's still asleep downstairs. I just came to check on you." Emily's mouth went dry. Nothing about the way he stood there felt normal. Her mind raced with questions she didn't ask. Why was he in her room in the middle of the night? Why did he need to check on her? She tried to steady her voice as she answered, "I'm fine. You didn't need to come up here." Richard smiled faintly, but there was something unsettling in the way his eyes lingered on her. "You remind me of your mom," he said, almost in a whisper. "You've grown up so fast." Emily swallowed hard, gripping her blanket tighter. She had heard people compare her to her mother before, but hearing it from him, in that moment, in the darkness of her bedroom, sent a shiver down her spine. Before she could respond, a sound from downstairs broke the silence. A cough. Heavy footsteps shifting on the old wooden floor. Her father was stirring. Richard glanced over his shoulder quickly, then back at her. "Get some sleep," he said, his tone suddenly clipped, before slipping back into the hallway and closing the door gently behind him. Emily sat frozen for a long time, her mind spinning. Every instinct screamed that something wasn't right. She barely slept the rest of the night, and when the morning sun poured into her room, she almost questioned whether it had really happened or if it was just some strange dream brought on by exhaustion. But when she went downstairs for breakfast, she saw Richard sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee as though nothing unusual had happened. Her father was cheerful, thanking Richard for staying the night, so he wouldn't have to drink and drive. Emily forced a smile, but inside, the unease twisted deeper. She couldn't shake the memory of the shadow in her doorway and the strange words whispered in the night. That was the beginning of everything that followed, the moment when Emily realized her father's friend wasn't who she thought he was, and that the safety of their quiet home was nothing more than an illusion waiting to shatter.